This is a roll-to-hit gaming playthrough. In this video, we continue our 3-part game showcase. The playthrough is intended to show you how a game you might have interest in looks and plays. Welcome and thank you for joining us. Let's head into the game room for your roll-to-hit gaming playthrough host.
Welcome back. I'm Lucas from Roll to Hit Gaming, and today we'll play Ultra Tiny Epic Kingdoms from Scott Almes and Gamelyn Games. In this playthrough, we're going to try something just a little different because it would seem to us that at least part of the appeal of the Tiny Epic game series is the inclusion of solo play rules. So today, I'll show you a solo play of this game. We didn't focus on solo play in our first look, so this should give you a different view and hopefully help you decide whether or not this is a game for you. Essentially, this is a one-on-one fight against an automated opponent. The game introduces a compass card mechanic and uses the war die to facilitate this, which I'll show you as we play. So we're set up for our solo game here. The dummy player is the orange player at the bottom, and for the dummy player we drew the Dark Elf race. And I'll be the white player at the top of your screen, and I drew the Construct race. The rulebook suggests for a solo play to start the dummy player with 3 of each resource, and I've started with 3 ore, 2 food, and 1 mana. So we'll see how that works out. Play proceeds basically like it would in a normal multiplayer game. The difference being the opponent, the dummy player, is automated and will use the compass in order to determine his actions and in order to determine which armies move and where. Start off by selecting an action just like you would in a standard game. I'm going to choose the patrol action and move one of my armies into the mountains. The dummy player must follow your action and perform that action if he can. Otherwise, he'll collect resources. Additionally, the dummy player can collect resources even when they are the active player selecting the action if that action's not valid. To determine which of the dummy player's armies will patrol, we'll roll a war die. We rolled a 6, which points this way. Anytime we roll a result that doesn't point us towards one of the regions that has one of the dummy player's armies, we'll simply walk around the dial clockwise until we hit a region that does. So starting at 6, we walk clockwise until we get to this army, and that army will patrol to 3, which is directly this way. So we simply move into the capital region with that army. It's now the dummy player's turn to select an action, and they roll the war die for that as well. They roll a 7, and around the rim of the compass are the actions which correspond with the numbers. 7 is research, so they've chosen to take the research action. They'll pay 1 mana, and they'll move up 1 level on their magical research track. Now, if the Dark Elf player has only 2 armies in play, other players cannot start a war with them. I'll also perform the research action, spend 1 mana, and gain my first ability. When at war with me in the mountains, opponents pay +1 war cost. I'll choose the build action, spend 1 ore, and build the first level of my tower. The dummy player can take the action, so they must. They'll spend 1 ore and also build the first level of their tower. To select the dummy player's action, again we roll the war die. 5 is patrol, but that action's already been selected this turn, so we simply walk clockwise around the compass until we find a valid action. The next valid action is expand. The dummy player has 2 armies in play, so to place a third, they would have to spend 3 food. And rather than placing an army in a space with one of their other armies, like the normal player must, the dummy player places it adjacent to one of the armies in play. So we'll determine which army that is by rolling a 4, which points us in this direction. As always, if it's not valid, we walk around the compass until we find one that is, and then we'll determine which direction we place the army. 6 walks here, so come around. Placing next to this army, we'll place their new army right there. Rather than expand, I'll choose to collect resources, and I'll gain 1 ore and 1 food. I'll choose the trade action, and I'll trade 2 ore for 2 mana. And when the dummy player trades, they simply gain 1 of each resource. It's the dummy player's turn to select an action. The card is full. We'll clear it like normal, but this is an area where the solo game gets a little different. We'll flip the compass card over, indicating that we've moved to nighttime. There are a couple of things that change as a result of this. In order to win a war, the solo player has to pay the war cost as indicated on the compass card. At night, the war cost is the number of dummy armies times 1. During the day, the multiplier is times 2. So it's twice as hard to do battle with the dummy player in the daytime as it is at night. Secondly, the selection priority changes at night. At night, when we would roll a result that would give us more than one option to select an army, we'll choose the army that's furthest away from the compass card. During the day, we would choose that which is closest. Other than that, play proceeds exactly as it has. To select the dummy player's action, we'll roll the war die. 1 is research, so the dummy player will spend 2 mana to perform the research action. They'll move up 1 level. Now when defending, they have -1 war cost. I'll also research, spending 2 mana, and I can use ore and or food to expand. I'll choose the expand action. I have 2 armies in play, wishing to place a third, so that'll be 3 food. I pay 3 food and place the new army in the same region as one of my existing armies. The dummy player only has 1 food, therefore they can't expand, and they'll collect resources, gaining 1 ore and 1 food. When moving from day to night or night to day, the dummy player gains 1 of each type of resource. We forgot that, so let's go ahead and correct that mistake at this time. The dummy player rolls the war die to select their action, rolling a 9, which is the build action. The dummy player spends 2 ore and builds the next level of their tower. I only have 1 ore, so I can't build, so I'll collect resources, gaining 1 ore and 1 food. Remember, even though I have 2 armies in the plains, a region can only produce a single resource. I'll choose the patrol action to move 1 of my armies into the forest. We'll roll the war die to see which of the dummy player's armies patrols. We roll the flag result, which is 12, which is straightforward, so this army has been selected, and we'll roll again to see which direction he patrols. 6 points here, so we walk around, and the dummy player will patrol into the forest. We'll roll the die to select the dummy player's action, and 11 is quest. We'll see which of the dummy player's armies will quest. 3 points this direction, so we'll walk clockwise until we get to 11. However, that intercedes both sections. It's nighttime, so we'll select the army furthest from the compass card, and that army will quest. Let's see where it will quest. 9 points this direction, so we walk clockwise as always, and this army will quest into this mountain region. Remember, patrol is from region to region on a specific territory card, and quest is from outer regions on territory cards to other outer regions on territory cards. I choose not to quest, and will instead collect resources, collecting 1 of each type. It's my turn to select an action. We'll clear the card, flip from night to day, give the dummy player 1 of each type of resource, and I'll select the build action. This army will patrol into the forest, starting a war. War in the solo player version is a little different. The dummy player never pays war costs, and their war value is based on whether it's day or night and the number of armies they have in play. They have 3 armies in play, and the daytime multiplier is times 2. So the war cost to defeat the dummy player is 6. Because of the trade I made in my last action, I have 3 mana, which has a war value of 2. I'll pay my 3 mana, equaling 6, to defeat the dummy army. That forces him to retreat. As normal, the dummy army does have to pay the food cost in order to be able to retreat without having to remove their army from the board as a casualty. They have 3 armies in play, so they'll pay 3 food to retreat their army. I choose not to patrol, so I'll collect resources, gaining 1 of each type. Because of the water, the dummy player would have to cross into the plains region. However, there are already 2 armies in that region, and there can never be more than 2 armies in the same region, so the dummy player patrols into the mountain. It's nighttime, and the dummy player has 3 armies, making the war cost 3. I'll pay 2 mana and 1 food, forcing the dummy player to retreat. The dummy player must pay 3 food in order to pay for their retreat. Rather than patrol, I'll collect resources and gain 1 of each type of resource. This causes the dummy player army to quest into the forest and start a war. It's nighttime, and the dummy player has 3 armies, so the war cost is 3. I don't have 3 war resources available, nor do I have 3 food to retreat, so my army is removed from the game as a casualty. One of the tricky things about the solo version of Ultra Tiny Epic Kingdoms is the fact that any action you take, your opponent gets to answer with. Sometimes, the risk versus reward doesn't quite pay off. We rolled a 10 to select which dummy army will patrol. 10 points here, so walking clockwise, we come to these regions. It's daytime, so we'll select the army closest to the compass card, so this army will patrol. The only valid patrol move for that army is to move into this plains, starting another war. Being daytime, the war value is 6, and I don't have 6 resources or enough food to retreat, so this army is removed from the game as a casualty. Select the dummy army to patrol. 8 points here, so we'll walk clockwise. This army will patrol to 3 directly across, moving into the capital region, starting a war. It's daytime, and the dummy player has 4 armies, meaning the war cost is 8, which I obviously can't pay, nor do I have the food to retreat, so this army is removed from the battlefield as a casualty. I'll choose the research action and spend 3 mana to research the next level of magic. And my ore now has a war value of 2 rather than 1. The dummy player will spend 5 mana and research their final level of magic. This unlocks a bonus victory point if they occupy 3 forests at game end, or 2 bonus victory points if they occupy 5 forests. Completing your magical research also triggers game end. The next time the action card is cleared, the game will end immediately and will tally victory points. The dummy player chooses the next action. 7 is research, which has been taken, so they'll select the trade action, gaining 1 of each resource. Rather than trade, I'll collect resources and gain 1 ore and 1 mana. Rather than allow the dummy player to complete their tower, I'll choose the expand action. And I'll spend 3 ore because of my special ability allowing me to spend ore or food to expand and place another army on the board. The dummy player has 5 armies and they don't have 6 food, so instead they'll collect resource. They collect 2 ore, 2 mana, and 1 food. It's time to clear the action card, so the game ends and we count victory points. Players score 1 victory point for each army in play. The dummy player has 5, I have 3. 1 victory point for each level of magic researched. The dummy player has 5, I have 3. Also score victory points based on tower completion. The dummy player has 7, I have 4. The capital city wasn't controlled at the end of the game, so no player scores those 2 victory points. And any victory points based off of reaching your 5th level of magic. The Dark Elf player needed to occupy 3 forests to gain a bonus victory point. They only have 2. The game ends. The dummy player scores 17, and I score 10. This is how you play Ultra Tiny Epic Kingdoms solo. In our next video, I'll come back and give you my impressions of this game. Hopefully, you enjoyed this. For Roll to Hit Gaming, I'm Lucas. Have a great one.
Thank you for joining Roll to Hit Gaming for another playthrough where we pull a game off the shelf and take it out onto the table. If you like what you saw and want to see more, please click the like and subscribe buttons. Find us on Facebook and Twitter. Join in the conversation in the comments below. We'll see you next time, and as always, may the odds be ever in your favor.